Captain Rex Maverick stared at his coffee mug with the kind of disappointment usually reserved for discovering your lottery ticket is off by one number. The liquid inside had gone cold about 3 hours ago, right around the time his hyperdrive decided to throw what could only be described as a mechanical tantrum. "Well, this is just fantastic," he muttered, tapping the dead console with the kind of gentle persistence that never actually fixes anything but makes you feel better about trying. His cargo hauler, the aptly named Rusty Venture, was now drifting through the Nexus void like a very expensive piece of space junk. And wouldn't you know it? The Nexus void happened to be the galaxy's premier destination for things that wanted to kill you. The first warning klaxon started blaring just as Rex was considering whether his coffee was still drinkable. His scanner lit up like a Christmas tree that had gotten into the liquor cabinet. "Oh, come on," Rex sighed, recognizing the distinctive energy signature of Zephyrian raiders. The Crimson Claws, if his memory served. Nasty bunch, all chitin and attitude, with the tactical subtlety of a brick through a window. Before he could even reach for his communicator, the scanner started having what appeared to be an electronic seizure. 2 more fleets were converging on his position. The tentacled Aquarians of the Void Serpents were approaching from the port side, while the militaristic Draconians of the Iron Fangs were burning hard from starboard. Rex took another sip of cold coffee and winced. 3 different raider fleets, in the same sector, at the same time. What are the odds? He paused, actually calculating. Roughly 14,000 to 1, assuming normal patrol patterns, which means this is either the universe's idea of a practical joke, or someone really wants me dead. The comm system crackled to life with overlapping threats in 3 different languages. The universal translator was working overtime, turning what was probably very creative profanity into something resembling coherent demands for surrender. Captain Skitter of the Crimson Claws was the first to establish a clear channel, his insectoid voice clicking with barely contained excitement. "Unknown vessel, you have entered our hunting grounds. Prepare to be boarded and stripped of all valuable components. Your crew will be processed for the slave markets." "Actually," interrupted Captain Tentacula of the Void Serpents, her voice carrying the liquid menace that only came from having too many tentacles. "This vessel entered our territory first. By salvage rights, the prey belongs to us." General Slag of the Iron Fangs cut through both transmissions with the kind of military precision that suggested he ironed his underwear. "Both of you are mistaken. This sector falls under Iron Fang jurisdiction as of the Crimson Nebula Accords. Stand down immediately." Rex listened to this exchange with the mild interest of someone watching a nature documentary about particularly stupid predators. He pulled up his ship's external cameras and watched 3 of the galaxy's most feared raider fleets positioning themselves in what could only be described as the worst tactical formation he'd seen since the Battle of Sigma 7. "Gentlemen, lady," Rex finally keyed into the comm channel, "I hate to interrupt what I'm sure is a very important discussion about who gets to murder me, but I couldn't help noticing you're all pointing your weapons at each other as much as at me. Is that intentional, or are you just having coordination issues?" The silence that followed was the kind you get when someone points out that the Emperor isn't wearing any clothes, except in this case the Emperor was 3 separate fleets of heavily armed psychopaths who just realized they might have walked into something more complicated than a simple shakedown. Rex took another sip of coffee, made another face, and settled in to watch the show. The silence stretched for exactly 47 seconds, which Rex knew because he was timing it on his chronometer, while simultaneously running a diagnostic on his hyperdrive. Old habits died hard, and multitasking was practically a survival skill when you lived the kind of life that attracted 3 raider fleets simultaneously. It was Captain Skitter who broke first, his voice carrying a note of uncertainty that probably hadn't been there since his molting season. "Running enhanced scans on the target vessel. Standard cargo configuration, minimal armament, single life form aboard." A pause. Wait. Scanning deeper. Rex could practically hear the collective intake of breath, tentacle, and whatever noise Draconians made when they were surprised. He'd heard it before, usually right before things got interesting. "Oh, this is rich." Tentacula's voice carried a new edge, like silk wrapped around a vibroblade. "Our scanners are picking up some very interesting energy signatures," Ship modifications that shouldn't exist on a cargo hauler. And that pilot, his biosignature is in our database. General Slag's military composure cracked like cheap hull plating. Impossible. Cross-referencing now. Biometric match confirmed. Tactical profile match confirmed. Visual recognition by the 7 hells of Draken Prime. Would you like to share with the class? Rex asked pleasantly, though he was already pulling up his own files. Might as well see which particular chapter of his illustrious past had come back to haunt him this time. You're him. Skitter's voice had gone from predatory clicking to something resembling a squeak. You're the ghost of Kepler Prime, the Tactician of Fallen Empires, the man who brought down the hegemony with nothing but a mining ship and a really bad attitude. Rex paused mid-sip. Oh, that me. He'd hoped they'd match him to one of his smaller jobs. Maybe the Centauri incident, or that amusing misunderstanding with the Trade Federation. But no, they had to go straight for the greatest hits album. The scanner data was painting quite a picture for his unwelcome guests. 5 years ago, the Galactic hegemony had been the unchallenged superpower in this sector. 12,000 ships, advanced technology, and an ego the size of a small moon. Rex had dismantled the entire organization using 3 mining vessels, a communications array, and the kind of strategic thinking that made chess grandmasters weep into their coffee. The Trade Consortium, Tentacula whispered, her voice carrying the kind of awe usually reserved for natural disasters. You destroyed them too. Made them think they were being invaded by the Void Runners when it was just sensor ghosts and clever positioning. And the Stellar Republic, Slag added, his military training warring with what was clearly dawning horror, turned their own fleet against each other by feeding them false intelligence about a coup that didn't exist. 300 ships destroyed in friendly fire incidents. Rex set down his coffee cup with the kind of deliberate care that suggested he was thinking very hard about something. You know, I keep telling people it wasn't personal. These organizations just had really glaring tactical weaknesses. It's like leaving your front door open and wondering why someone walked in. The truth was, Rex hadn't set out to be a legendary tactician. He'd started as a simple cargo runner, the kind of guy who delivered supplies to mining colonies and minded his own business. But then the hegemony had decided his shipping routes were inconvenient and tried to remove him from the equation. That had been their first mistake. Their second mistake had been underestimating what one very annoyed human could accomplish with enough time to plan, and a complete lack of regard for conventional tactics. So, Rex continued conversationally, now that we've established my resume, perhaps we could discuss your current formation. Because I have to say, from a professional standpoint, it's really quite terrible. Skitter, you've got your heavy cruisers clustered too tightly. Tentacula, your flanking ships are positioned where Slag can bracket them with crossfire. And Slag, well, your disciplined formation is very pretty, but it's also predictable enough that I could plot firing solutions in my head. He paused, genuinely curious. Did you all coordinate this intercept, or did you just happen to arrive at the same time? Because if this was planned, I'm a little disappointed in the execution. The comm channels went quiet again, and Rex could practically feel 3 separate fleets of raiders suddenly realizing that their easy prey was offering them tactical advice. This was going to be fun. Rex had always believed that the best weapon in any arsenal was the space between someone's ears. Unfortunately, most people weren't using that particular piece of equipment to its full potential, which created opportunities for those who were. I'm curious, he said, examining his fingernails with the kind of casual interest that suggested he wasn't currently surrounded by enough firepower to sterilize a small planet. How exactly did you all end up here at the same time? I mean, what are the odds that 3 completely separate raider organizations would independently decide to patrol the exact same worthless stretch of void? Captain Skitter's chittering took on a defensive edge. The Crimson Claws patrol this sector on a regular rotation. We have salvage rights dating back to the Proxima Accords. Funny thing about those accords, Tentacula interjected smoothly, they were superseded by the Tau Ceti Agreement, which clearly establishes Void Serpent claims to this region. General Slag's voice carried the weight of military authority. and barely suppressed irritation. Both of your organizations are operating under outdated documentation. The Iron Fangs hold legitimate territorial grants from the former Stellar Republic. Rex made a thoughtful humming noise. The former Stellar Republic. Right. The same government I collapsed 3 years ago by convincing them their own admirals were planning a coup. I remember that. Good times. He paused for effect. But here's the interesting part. None of those agreements actually cover this specific sector. The Nexus Void has been neutral territory since the Breakdown Wars. He could practically hear the collective sound of 3 fleets frantically checking their navigation computers. So, either you're all here by coincidence, Rex continued, or someone fed you information about a juicy target in unclaimed space. The question is, who benefits from getting 3 rival organizations to converge on the same location? The silence that followed was the kind that develops when predators suddenly realize they might not be at the top of the food chain. Think about it, Rex said, warming to his theme. Skitter, when's the last time the Crimson Claws and the Iron Fangs worked the same sector without shooting at each other? And Tentacula, the Void Serpents have been trying to muscle in on Draconian territory for months. Suddenly you're all here, together, pointing guns at the same target. Captain Skitter's voice had developed a distinct, nervous edge. You're suggesting someone deliberately arranged this encounter? I'm not suggesting anything, Rex replied innocently. I'm just observing that 3 organizations with a history of mutual hostility don't usually end up playing nice in the same sandbox without some external motivation. Rex pulled up his tactical display and started running probability calculations. Not for any particular reason, just because he enjoyed the mental exercise. The numbers were interesting. Of course, he mused. If I were someone looking to eliminate competition in this sector, arranging for 3 rival organizations to meet in neutral space would be quite clever, especially if I could guarantee they'd end up fighting each other instead of cooperating. Who would dare? Slag demanded, his military pride clearly stung by the suggestion that he'd been manipulated. Well, let's see, Rex said thoughtfully. The Nebula Consortium has been expanding aggressively. The Shadow Trade Guild has been unusually quiet lately. Or maybe it's someone smaller, someone who'd benefit from 3 major raider organizations tearing each other apart. He paused, examining his coffee cup again. Still cold, still disappointing. Then again, he continued, maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe it really is just a coincidence. 3 fleets, same sector, same time. Happens all the time in a galaxy this big. His voice carried just enough skepticism to make it clear he didn't believe a word of what he was saying. Meanwhile, Rex was quietly working on his actual problem, the dead hyperdrive. The power coupling had blown, probably due to the substandard replacement parts he'd installed at his last port of call. But hyperdrives were finicky beasts, and they needed very specific electromagnetic conditions to restart properly. Fortunately, he was currently surrounded by the kind of electromagnetic chaos that 3 fleets worth of ship systems generated. All he needed was for that chaos to reach the right intensity levels, which would require the fleets to power up their weapon systems and start maneuvering aggressively. Nothing created electromagnetic interference quite like a good old-fashioned space battle. You know what the really interesting part is? Rex asked conversationally. I'm just a cargo hauler, single ship, minimal weapons, no threat to anyone. But here you all are, 3 full fleets, acting like I'm some kind of strategic threat. He let that sink in for a moment. Almost like someone told you I was worth the effort. The beautiful thing about paranoia, Rex reflected, was that once it took root, it grew like a particularly aggressive space fungus. And judging by the increasingly agitated chatter on the comm channels, his little seeds of doubt were sprouting nicely. Void Serpents, this is Iron Fang Actual. General Slag's voice had developed the kind of crisp authority that usually preceded someone making a very poor decision. Your ships are moving into attack formation. Explain your intentions immediately. Our intentions, Tentacula replied with silky menace, are to claim legitimate salvage rights. If anyone's acting aggressively, it's the Crimson Claws. They've been powering weapons this entire time. Powering weapons? Skitter's clicking reached fever pitch. We're maintaining defensive posture. The Draconians have been targeting our cruisers since they arrived. Rex watched his tactical display with the satisfaction of a conductor watching his orchestra hit all the right notes. The three fleets were spreading out, weapon systems charging, shields coming online. The electromagnetic interference was climbing beautifully. "Gentlemen, lady," he interjected mildly. "I hate to interrupt, but from my perspective it looks like you're all preparing to shoot each other, which seems counterproductive if your goal is to capture one lonely cargo hauler." "Stay out of this, human," Slag snapped. "We're dealing with treachery." "Treachery?" Rex sounded genuinely surprised. "That's a strong word. Are you sure it's not just tactical positioning? I mean, if I were planning to betray my temporary allies, I probably wouldn't do it so obviously." He paused, as if a thought had just occurred to him, unless, of course, the obviousness was the point. Make it look like an accident, like things just escalated naturally. Rex's voice carried the tone of someone working through a fascinating puzzle. "Very clever, actually. Though I have to say, I'm impressed that one of you managed to coordinate this whole thing." "Coordinate what?" Three voices demanded simultaneously. "Well, think about it," Rex said reasonably. "Someone arranged for all three fleets to be here. Someone's been feeding intelligence about my movements. Someone's been very carefully orchestrating this entire encounter." He paused for dramatic effect. "The question is, which one of you is playing the other two?" The comm channels erupted in accusations and denials, exactly as Rex had hoped. Meanwhile, his jury-rigged diagnostic was showing promising results. The electromagnetic interference was approaching optimal levels, and his improvised power coupling was actually holding together. "I have to admit," he continued over the growing chaos, "it's an elegant plan. Get your rivals to eliminate each other, then swoop in and claim all the territory. Very forward-thinking." "Iron Fangs are moving to bracket us," one of Tentacula's subordinates reported over an open channel. "Recommend immediate evasive action." "Void Serpents are launching fighters," came Skitter's panicked response. "All ships combat formation." "This is exactly what someone wanted," Rex observed with genuine admiration. "Three fleets, mutual destruction, problem solved. Brilliant, really. Though I do feel a bit guilty about being the catalyst." The first shots were fired by the Crimson Claws, though Rex was fairly certain it was an accident. Some jumpy gunner with too much caffeine and not enough sense. But intentions didn't matter when energy beams started flying. The Iron Fangs responded with military precision, their formation wheeling to present broadside to both rival fleets. The Void Serpents scattered like startled fish, their ships flowing into an attack pattern that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so deadly. And through it all, Rex sat in his battered cargo hauler, carefully monitoring the electromagnetic readings and making minor adjustments to his improvised hyperdrive repair. "You know," he said over the growing battle noise, "I should probably mention something. That whole reputation of mine, the Tactician of Fallen Empires, I didn't earn that title by being lucky." A Zephyrian cruiser took a direct hit from a draconian dreadnought, its shields flaring and failing in a cascade of brilliant light. The explosion added another delicious spike to Rex's electromagnetic readings. "I earned it by being very, very good at getting people to do exactly what I needed them to do." The realization hit all three fleet commanders at the same moment, but by then it was far too late. They were committed to battle, their formations engaged, their weapons firing. Stopping now would leave them vulnerable to their enemies, and none of them could afford that kind of weakness. Rex smiled and initiated the startup sequence for his hyperdrive. "The thing about tactical manipulation," he said pleasantly, "is that the best targets never see it coming. They think they're making their own choices, following their own logic. They don't realize they're dancing to someone else's tune until the music stops." His hyperdrive hummed to life, powered by the electromagnetic chaos of three fleets trying to destroy each other. "And the music," Rex added, engaging his navigation systems, "is about to stop." The hyperdrive engaged with the kind of smooth precision that Rex hadn't felt in months, powered by what was essentially a massive three-way battle, serving as his personal electromagnetic generator. Sometimes the universe had a sense of humor after all, but Rex wasn't quite ready to leave yet. He had a reputation to maintain after all. "Attention all vessels," he announced over the general comm channel, his voice cutting through the chaos of battle damage reports and tactical updates. I want to thank you all for participating in today's tactical exercise. Your performance has been educational. A void serpent destroyer exploded in a brilliant cascade of plasma as Rex spoke, adding a lovely crescendo to his words. The electromagnetic pulse from its death throes gave his hyperdrive another surge of power. For those of you keeping score at home, Rex continued conversationally, we've just witnessed a textbook example of tactical manipulation. Step 1. Identify targets with existing tensions. Step 2. Provide a catalyst for those tensions. Step 3. Offer information that confirms existing biases. Step 4. Sit back and let paranoia do the heavy lifting. Captain Skitter's voice crackled through heavy static, his ship's communications apparently damaged. You planned this. The entire encounter. Planned is such a strong word, Rex replied. I prefer optimized for favorable outcomes. You see, I really did have a hyperdrive malfunction. That part was genuine. But when I realized I was about to have company, well, it seemed foolish not to make the best of the situation. His navigation computer chirped helpfully, indicating that hyperspace calculations were complete. His destination, a quiet agricultural colony, where his biggest worry would be whether the fertilizer shipment was on time. The electromagnetic interference from your battle has provided exactly the power surge I needed to restart my hyperdrive, Rex explained, as if he were conducting a classroom lecture. Meanwhile, you've all been so busy shooting each other that none of you remembered to actually stop me from leaving. General Slag's dreadnought was trading heavy fire with 2 Aquarian cruisers, but the Draconian found enough bandwidth to snarl, "We'll hunt you to the end of the galaxy for this deception." "I'm sure you'll try," Rex agreed pleasantly. "Though I should point out that hunting me hasn't worked out particularly well for the last few organizations that attempted it. The hegemony had better resources than all 3 of your fleets combined, and look how that turned out for them." He paused to watch a particularly spectacular explosion as a Crimson Claw frigate's reactor went critical. "Besides," he continued, "I'm retired. These days I mostly haul cargo and mind my own business. It's much more peaceful than toppling galactic governments, though admittedly less lucrative." The battle was reaching its crescendo now, with all 3 fleets fully committed to mutual destruction. Rex's tactical display showed the kind of chaotic engagement that military academies used as examples of how not to conduct fleet operations. "I do want to leave you with one final thought," Rex said, his hand hovering over the hyperdrive activation control. "The next time you corner someone in the Nexus Void, you might want to ask yourself why they're not running. Sometimes the mouse isn't trapped. Sometimes the mouse is exactly where it wants to be." Captain Tentacula's flagship was listing badly, its elegant curves marred by gaping hull breaches, but her voice still carried venom as she hissed, "This isn't over, human." "No," Rex agreed, "it's not. Because in about 6 hours, news of this encounter is going to reach every communication hub in the sector. The story of how 3 major raider fleets got outmaneuvered by a single cargo hauler drinking cold coffee. Your reputations will never recover." He activated the hyperdrive. "Oh, and one more thing," he added as reality began to blur around his ship. "Next time you want to coordinate an ambush, you might consider using encrypted channels." Half the galaxy was probably listening to this conversation. The last thing Rex saw before hyperspace claimed his ship was the moment when all 3 fleet commanders simultaneously realized that their tactical chatter had been broadcasting on open frequencies the entire time. Every threat, every strategic discussion, every moment of their humiliation had been recorded and transmitted across the sector's communication networks. Rex smiled and settled back in his pilot's chair. The coffee was still cold, but somehow it didn't taste quite as disappointing anymore. "Rusty venture to Harvest Station," he said into his comm, opening a channel to his destination. "Cargo delivery on schedule, ETA in 4 hours. And yes, Martha, I'll remember to pick up your knitting supplies this time." Sometimes it was good to be legendary, but most of the time, it was better to be the guy who delivered fertilizer on time and never forgot the knitting supplies. 3 days later, Rex was elbow-deep in a hydroponic nutrient system that had seen better decades, trying to explain to Farmer Martinez why his tomatoes were turning purple when his comm unit started playing what sounded like a very familiar conversation. "Turn that up, would you?" Martha called from across the equipment bay, her knitting needles clicking in time with her words. At 73, Martha Chen was the closest thing Harvest Station had to a news anchor, mostly because she had the best gossip network in the sector. Confirmed reports that the notorious raider fleets suffered catastrophic losses in what military analysts are calling the most spectacular tactical blunder in modern warfare, the announcer was saying with barely contained glee. Audio recordings of the entire encounter have been circulating throughout the communications network, featuring what appears to be a single cargo pilot manipulating 3 separate fleet commanders into destroying each other. Rex winced and pretended to be very interested in a particularly stubborn nutrient valve. "The pilot's identity remains unconfirmed," the report continued, though voice analysis suggests it may be the individual known as the Ghost of Kepler Prime, previously thought to be dead or retired. The Tactician of Fallen Empires has apparently added another chapter to his legend of impossible victories against overwhelming odds. Martha's knitting needles stopped clicking. "Rex, honey, doesn't that voice sound familiar to you?" "Can't say it does," Rex replied, though he was pretty sure his own mother wouldn't have believed that particular lie. Probably just one of those coincidences. Galaxies full of people who sound alike. The report was getting into the juicy details now. Apparently, the surviving raiders had become reluctant celebrities, giving interviews about their encounter with the most terrifying tactical mind in known space. Captain Skitter had reportedly joined a monastery. General Slag had requested early retirement. Captain Tentacula had been seen at a therapy station in the core worlds. The psychological impact appears to have been as devastating as the physical losses, the analyst noted. These were hardened military professionals, reduced to quivering wrecks by a conversation with a cargo pilot. It raises serious questions about the state of tactical training in modern fleet operations. Rex's comm unit beeped with an incoming message, then another, then about 15 more in rapid succession. "Popular fellow," Martinez observed, wiping his hands on a rag that had probably been white sometime during the previous administration. "Someone's got your number." Rex glanced at the message queue with the kind of resignation usually reserved for tax audits. Half the messages were from journalists wanting interviews. The other half were from various criminal organizations either offering him jobs or promising to hunt him down, depending on their relationship with the recently deceased raider fleets. One message stood out, though. It was from a Zephyrian merchant named Clicksworth, and the subject line read, "Urgent cargo delivery, no questions asked. Premium rates." Rex almost smiled. In his experience, a "no questions asked" usually meant "please help us with something that's probably illegal but definitely profitable." And premium rates suggested they were desperate enough to pay through all 6 of their insectoid noses. "Martha," he called, "I might need to make another supply run soon. You need anything from the core worlds?" "Just the usual," she replied, her needles resuming their rhythmic clicking. "And Rex, try not to accidentally destroy any more fleets on your way there. The insurance premiums are already murder." Rex chuckled and deleted most of the messages without reading them, but he kept the one from Clicksworth. A man had to make a living after all, and cargo hauling was surprisingly expensive when you factored in the cost of replacement hyperdrive components. His comm unit chimed with one final message, this one tagged as priority urgent. The sender was listed as unknown, but the message itself was brief and to the point. "Rex, darling, I hope retirement is treating you well. Unfortunately, we have a small problem that requires your particular expertise. The Andorian hegemony has been asking uncomfortable questions about their missing treasury ships. I don't suppose you'd be interested in a consulting position? The pay is excellent, and the benefits include not being hunted by vengeful Andorians. Do call me. V." Rex stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. V could wait. The Andorian hegemony could wait. The galaxy's problems could wait. Right now, he had purple tomatoes to diagnose and a hyperponic system that was older than most civilizations. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest work, and it didn't require him to manipulate anyone into destroying themselves. Usually. His comm unit beeped again. New message. Local origin. Farmer Peterson, probably complaining about his irrigation system again. But the message wasn't from Peterson. It was from Harvest Station Traffic Control, and it was flagged as urgent. Rex, we've got 3 ships requesting permission to dock. They're flying Raider colors, but they seem nervous. Thought you should know. Tommy. Rex sighed and looked out the viewport toward the station's docking bays. 3 ships, probably what was left of someone's fleet after hearing the news reports. They were here either to offer him a job or to try their luck at revenge. Either way, it was going to be an interesting day. Martha, he called. Cancel that supply run. Looks like I'm going to be busy. More visitors? She asked, not looking up from her knitting. Probably, Rex replied, checking to make sure his coffee pot was full. If he was going to accidentally dismantle another criminal organization, he was at least going to do it with proper caffeine levels. After all, a man had to have standards.